Welcome to Cooking and Baking 101, equipping caregivers to create delicious and nutritious homemade meals. Brought to you by American Way University. This is part 2 of a 6-part series. Once again, my name is Angie Danielski and I will be your guide during this training. Contributing to our course content is our cooking and baking expert, Krista Bly, who is featured in the video segment. Here is an overview of what the second segment of the presentation will cover. You should have already viewed Part 1. Learning about the basics of preparation and cooking is first on the agenda, focusing on measuring ingredients. This will include exploring measuring cups, measuring spoons, and kitchen scales. Okay, now that you know why cooking and baking from scratch is beneficial to you, let's get started. Before we jump into talking about preparing various aspects of the meal, let's go over some of the basics, such as proper measuring techniques and how to measure various types of ingredients. Measuring properly is a combination of using the right tools as well as the right methods. Measuring cups can be used for liquid or solid foods, however, it depends on which type of measuring cup you use. Liquids are often measured in a measuring cup that looks like a drinking cup and has a handle on one side with a pouring lip on the other. The cup is usually clear and has marked quantities on the outside. Measuring cups are often found in 1 or 2 cup sizes with smaller increments marked on the side, but can also be found in larger or smaller sizes. The other type of measuring cup is a group of smaller cups that appear to be scoop-like. These types of measuring cups are usually found in 1/4, 1/3, 1/2, and 1 cup increments. Solid food, also referred to as dry ingredients, are most commonly measured with this type of measuring cup. Measuring spoons are used for measuring smaller amounts of either liquid or solids. Measuring spoons often come in a group of 1/2 and 1 teaspoon and 1/2 and 1 tablespoon. If a measuring spoon set has more spoons, 1/8 and 1/4 teaspoon sizes may be included. Another way that a recipe may list ingredients is by weight, usually in ounces. A kitchen scale may have a digital readout or may have a dial that moves along a predetermined round scale, also known as a mechanical scale. Meats are often measured using ounces. Most foods that come in a package will also list the weight of the food on the outside of the package, which can also be listed by weight in a recipe. Cream cheese or sour cream can sometimes be listed according to ounces in a recipe, as the entire container would be used. The next few slides will take a closer look at measuring utilizing these tools. When using a measuring cup, there are certain ways to measure depending on what it is that you are measuring. First, we'll look at best practices in measuring liquids. When measuring liquids, it is important that the measuring cup is placed on a hard, flat surface. By doing this, the liquid level will be uniform and measurements will be more accurate. If holding the measuring cup and trying to read the measurements, one side may be at a different level than the other, as shown here in this picture. Also, as the liquids are poured into the measuring cup, it is important to be at eye level to correctly measure the liquid level. When a liquid is poured, the top of the liquid, or the meniscus, is where it should be at the standardized line, as seen here in this picture. Notice how the liquid makes a bowl shape at the top of the liquid, and the bottom of this bowl is touching the top of the line marked 2. Measuring cups usually have standardized markings in cups, milliliters marked ml, or fluid ounces marked OZ. For measurements in cups, the standardized markings are 1/4, 1/3, 1/2, 2/3, 3/4, and 1 cup for a 1-cup measuring cup. For a 2-cup measuring cup, the measurements would be the same as the 1-cup measuring cup, but in addition, it would also have 1 1/4, 1 1/3, 1 1/2, and so on. 1 cup is the same as 240 milliliters, which is the same as 8 fluid ounces. As mentioned in the previous slide, different ingredients are measured using different tools and techniques. For measuring solids, measuring cups that are scoop-like will be used. These are usually plastic or metal, but sometimes can be made of silicone or other materials. With flour, granulated sugar, which is the white sugar, and other ingredients that are similar in consistency, we refer to these ingredients as dry ingredients. Dry ingredients should be spooned into the measuring cup and then leveled off using the side of a knife or a spatula, as shown in the picture. These ingredients should not be packed down into the measuring cup. When measuring solid fats or brown sugar, the ingredient should be firmly pressed into the measuring cup and packed down. This type of ingredient will also be leveled off with the side of a knife or a spatula. Often, with butter, the side of the packaging will have markings noting 1 tablespoon or 1 TBSP in capital letters. The wrapper also has equivalents for 1/4, 1/3, and 1/2 a cup. Using a knife, select how much butter is needed and slice along that line. In this picture, the cut is being made for 1/4 cup of butter. In the next slide, Krista will demonstrate the technique for measuring flour and brown sugar.
A lot of people mistakenly measure flour out incorrectly by taking, this is happens to be a 1/2 a cup, taking the measuring cup and just dipping it right in the flour and kind of packing it in there, you know, and then leveling it off, and as you're doing that, it's kind of packing it in there more. Mm-hmm. So you just packed a lot of flour in this measuring cup, and this is a 1/2 a cup. I probably have closer to another 1/4 of a cup more than the 1/2 a cup that I have, because it's so packed in there. And if you ever have been baking and things are turning out dry, it could be very easily a simple solution of you're adding too much flour. And you kind of just take your flour and stir it up a little bit. You're getting some air into it, and that's it. You just kind of you fluffed it around in there, and take a knife. I'll use one of these, and just scrape it across the top. And there's the actual 1/2 a cup of flour. This is a granulated sugar. That's pretty easy to scoop in and get out. Brown sugar is pretty much all recipes call for brown sugar to be packed. Now this is the time when you want to pack it in there, and you make sure that it's packed tightly. So it's not even just a little bit like that. It is really tightly pushed down, packed.
Similar to measuring cups, measuring spoons also come in different sizes and are often made of plastic or metal. As with measuring cups, measuring spoons can also be made of silicone or other materials. When measuring solids, the measuring spoon is often used to scoop up the solid. Since the quantity is relatively small, there is no need to spoon the ingredient into the measuring spoon as with measuring cups. For measuring spoons, the teaspoon will be noted with a lowercase t or TSP, whereas a capital T or TBSP will be used for tablespoon. A teaspoon is a smaller quantity than a tablespoon. We can also think of a small spoon that we would use for eating as a teaspoon, and a larger spoon that we would use for eating as a tablespoon. 3 teaspoons are equal to 1 tablespoon. When measuring liquids, the liquid is poured into the measuring spoon until the spoon is filled to the brim. When pouring the liquid into the measuring spoon, it is not a bad idea to do so over the mixture being prepared, as not to spill any when moving the spoon. If a small amount of liquid drips over the spoon and into the mixture, which is more than the recipe calls for, it is generally okay since it's a small quantity to begin with. When pouring into a measuring spoon, it's a good idea to pour slowly to avoid a large quantity from spilling into the mixture. Another method of measuring ingredients is by weight using a kitchen scale. Kitchen scales can either be mechanical, with a dial to note the weight, or they can be digital, where there is a digital readout of the weight. Kitchen scales and measuring by weight are often used to weigh meat. Often a recipe will call for a specific weight of meat, or may simply list the number of pieces, such as 2 chicken breasts. Also, measuring by weight is becoming increasingly popular with different diets that are out there. Similarly, most European recipes use weight as the unit of measure. When using a mechanical scale, there is usually a bowl on top to hold the ingredient. However, with most digital scales, there will not be a bowl on top and will require the user to zero the scale, which also may be known as tearing the scale. The scale should initially read 0, otherwise the user must press the 0 or tear button. Next, the bowl is placed on the scale and the digital readout is allowed to stabilize. The user will then press the 0 or tear button and the scale will return back to 0 as shown in this picture. The scale is now ready to add an ingredient. Multiple ingredients may be added to the same bowl as long as the weight is stabilized and the 0 or tear button is pushed in between each ingredient. This concludes the second part of the American Way University training of Cooking and Baking 101, equipping caregivers to create delicious and nutritious homemade meals.